So I'm joined by Dr. Paul Myers, who is the Managing Director of Farm Urban, one of the latest businesses to join up with Good Liverpool. So thanks for joining me here today, Paul.
Yeah, great to be here, Lee. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I guess, first of all, it's not been the most conventional route to get where you are today. It's been an interesting journey. So just tell me a little bit about your journey that kind of culminates in the creation of Farm Urban.
Yes, so my background predominantly is in science. So I've got a background in something called epigenetics, which is the idea that your environment affects your health and well-being through your DNA. So I was studying for my PhD at Liverpool University, and then spent some time in the States working for the National Cancer Institute there. I was watching billions of dollars being spent developing treatments and drugs for diseases that, in part, my research was saying actually didn't necessarily need to be there in the kind of prevalence that they were. And then I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole of, actually if we lived healthier lives, if we ate better food, if we exercised more, if we were less stressed, it would take the pressure off the health system massively. And that was kind of a really interesting challenge for me. So rather than being at that kind of molecular level in the lab, I thought, what can we do in society with possibly a more direct impact, actually? How do we get out and help people change behaviour to lead healthier lives? And then I met Jens, who's the co-founder of Farm Urban. So similar background. So he's done lots of different things from science journalism, traveled around the world, kind of lived in Argentina for a year with kind of no running water, no access to electricity, and he kind of really has a real value for the environmental impact of food production. So we met 6-7 years ago and decided that we wanted to try and find some solutions to the problems that we were seeing around us, and then almost by accident, Farm Urban was born out of that, really.
And I mean, you have a science background. You've got a PhD, and you've done you're an academic. I think it's fair to say. But before that, you weren't necessarily going to go into the science sphere, were you?
No, not at all. So I kind of surrounded by business. My mom and dad are both in business, and they kind of actually told me, don't go get into business. It's they advised against it. And so I had a place to study law, so I was dead set on going and doing law. And then I took a year out and ended up doing charity work, conservation work in Central America, in Nicaragua and Costa Rica. And that really changed my perspective. So I think I just got a sense for kind of a more practical approach, and realised that actually law wasn't for me, and then started to see the impact that kind of the Western way is having on the environment, and then that kind of started me thinking in quite a different way, really.
So tell me about Farm Urban, what it is. Sorry, do that again. So tell me about Farm Urban.
So Farm Urban, we're a social enterprise based in Liverpool, founded 2014 by myself and Jens. And really, we kind of came at this myself with the background in health, wanting to find healthier ways for people to eat, and Jens really from the perspective of trying to find more sustainable, environmentally friendly ways to produce food. So we explored loads of different systems: aquaponics, vermiculture, urban farming, hydroponics, mushroom cultivation. And then we just kept coming back to this idea of growing food in cities in a sustainable way, but actually in a way that reconnects people to food. So, we often say, we need to bring farming out of these closed door factories where no one knows what's going on, and we need to embed it into the fabric of society. So, we green in buildings, we grow food on rooftops, in basements, and we kind of reconnect people to that food in a kind of more modern and up-to-date way, so they can. And I think there's something really special once you have a relationship with growing your own food that kind of makes it much easier to change habits and behaviours.
No, you're right, and we've seen with supermarkets have done initiatives where they've taught children where food actually comes from. It just doesn't appear on their plate by magic. It comes from a farm,
Yeah.
whether that be a mushroom, a lettuce,
Mm.
fruit, or even talking about milk and stuff like that. So the education element is very, very important. And what is the product? What's the kind of what is it that you're selling, and what is it that you're trying to achieve with Farm Urban?
So I suppose we've been kind of developing different concepts and products over the last 5 years. A lot of research and development into figuring out what was the optimum system to use in an urban setting. So over the years, we've installed various systems. So we put some in Alder Hay Children's Hospital. We put aquaponic systems on the roof of the University of Liverpool. We put an aquaponic system over at Nest Gardens in the visitor centre there. And then we've delivered a lot of education programs. So we have a small scale system that goes into classrooms and a series of education programs that wrap around that to kind of do exactly what you were just touching on before. But really that's all been brought together under the concept of Greens for Good. So Greens for Good is the brand that we've developed, which sells living greens. So we're growing greens in a basement in the Baltic Triangle using hydroponic. So we've got great big vertical towers, and we're growing about 4,000 leafy green plants in there at the moment. So our product comes out, it's a cardboard box with 4 living greens in there and some fresh cut herbs. So we went for the living greens, the lettuce, because we can actually pull the lettuce plant out of the tower with the roots still on, and then pop it in a little cardboard cup with some water, and then that plant is still alive. So then when we box that up and ship that out, there's no plastic. It's all in reusable and eventually compostable packaging. But actually when people get that home and open it up, it's not lost any of the nutritional value. So often when we crop a plant, all the phytonutrients and a lot of the enzymes, which are really, really important and have all the health benefits, they start to trail off. But if you're eating living food, fresh living food, then it's just a completely different product, really.
And we both talked about the education element. How important is it, and how important was it for you when you set up Farm Urban, I guess, to have the educational element as a part of your business?
Yeah, it was massive, really. And I don't think we didn't really know how important it was. We didn't really set out to be in education, but just the relationships we developed over the years, the people we met, it just happened. And then when we started to work with groups of students in the Life Sciences College in Liverpool, we just saw a spark go on when we started talking about urban farming and all these different kind of high-tech concepts and ways of growing food. And then it just became clear that if you're gonna, the way to change behaviors and improve people's health, well-being, and reduce the impact on the planet is to change people's attitudes and educate people on why this stuff is so important. And the earlier you do that, the better. So then kind of a key moment for me was when I had one of the little aquaponic systems that we've developed called the Produce Pod. So it's just a hack of 2 IKEA recycling bins and some general purpose plumbing components that we've put together in quite a cute little aquaponic system. And I had it in my kitchen. And my little girl, Bella, so she was 2 at the time, 2.5. And I was trying to get her to drink kale smoothies and eat plates of salad. And even though I'm super into this stuff, she was just not interested at all. She's like, no way, Daddy, I'm not eating that. But then she noticed the aquaponic system and she kind of saw the fish, and then she wants to feed the fish. And then she named them Fish and Fishy, who's still alive today. And then she took an interest in the plants, the green plants growing in the top, and she wants to smell them and taste them. And now every morning when she gets up still, the first thing she does is she comes down, feeds the fish, and we harvest the kale and the salad and the herb crops off the top of it, put them in the NutriBullet, blitz it up. And we've got these green frothy liquids that essentially are kale smoothie, but we call them super juices. And she drinks one, and she's in school telling all her friends about it. And, for years, kind of I've been told behavioral change is really hard to do. It takes, years, decades. but I'd seen it happen over the space of a few months. And it was at that point that I kind of thought, you know what, the education is key, and the two need to go hand in hand. We might be doing all this R&D and developing systems, but if we're just going to put systems on rooftops and no one knows they're there, no one knows why they're there, it's not going to have the impact that it could do if we kind of dovetailed that with citywide education programs, kind of showing kids that actually you can grow food in your classroom or your home, and this green stuff is really fun and it's really healthy. And there's a guy called Ron Finley who's an absolute hero of mine, but he did guerrilla gardening in South Central LA, and he has this phrase: if you grow it, you eat it. So if kids or people, if they've grown it, they're more likely to eat it. And I just fully buy that. If you get that connection in and form that relationship between, especially a kid and food, salad and greens become cool and they become interested because they're connected to it, which is key.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I've done it myself to a much smaller degree with grew some radishes, and my daughter, who didn't even know what was growing, she just saw the leaves above the pot.
Mm-hmm.
One day I said to her, have a look what's below it, and she kind of put, oh my, and there's that kind of realization. And I'd never seen her eat a radish before in her life. She'd always refused, but when she picked them and helped me cut them up and saw that I didn't want it to taste nice, then she really wanted to join in with that. And I mean, how gratifying is that? Must be one of the best parts of your job, I guess, to have that interaction with people in that way, not just your own daughter, but the people in schools and other educational establishments or offices or whoever.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so we run programs in primary schools and secondary schools. And we kind of start the programs off by going and give an assembly, which is the version of that TED talk that we gave a few years ago. And you kind of see the kids quite, a lot of these schools are kind of rough inner city schools, and they're thinking, what's this curly haired guy doing talking to me about farming? Like, it's got nothing to do with me. But then you kind of take them on that journey and they see that actually this is relevant and it is interesting and there's opportunities for you. And then by the end of the program, 10 weeks later, they come down to the farm and they're literally grabbing handfuls of greens and kind of eating them, and you've just seen them go on that journey and seeing attitudes completely changed.
I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, I think it might be a good idea if you could just tell me like exactly what the product looks like. So it's growing in the water, isn't it? Just kind of break it down for me and kind of lay it in terms, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. So hydroponics, probably the simplest concept is plants grown in water, and you add nutrients to that water. And there's many different variations of that. It kind of got a lot of attention about 15 years ago because NASA were looking at growing food in space, and it saves an awful lot of water. So you have plants grown in the top, water in the bottom, and the water circulates around. So you save about 90% of the water that you would if you're farming on a field. Now our hydroponic system, we do it vertically. So we have long vertical towers, and each tower has got 15 plants growing in it. And then we hang lights down in front of the towers. So if you go into our farm, it's almost like a library, but instead of books, we've got rows and rows of plants with lights hanging down in front of them. We have a big tank of water that circulates that around. Now, aquaponics is slightly different in that it's still plants grown in water, but instead of adding nutrients to the water, you also have a fish tank, and the fish are providing the nutrients for the plants to grow. Again, you can do that in lots of different configurations, but essentially you've got a tank with some fish. The waste from the fish's gills, ammonia, is then pumped into a separate tank with bacteria, which break down that ammonia and release all the things that a plant needs to grow. So the plants get a free fertilizer from the fish, and in turn the plants then clean the water for the fish. So it's a really nice, efficient closed loop system.
And it's a classic, circular system,
Exactly.
Which in these days of increased awareness of sustainability matters, it's becoming is coming more to the fore in many different parts of society, not just farming, recycling, even projects to make sure that we are reusing things
Yeah,
which we would
100%.
normally throw away. But as a consumer product, how popular are you finding these? Because they sound amazing, and I've seen what they look like on the website. They look
Yeah.
fantastic, and it's almost like modern art, and that's a compliment. It's
Thank you.
really
Yeah.
it looks fantastic, and people must really be reacting well to that, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think certainly the vertical farm that we've just installed in the Baltic Triangle, we're really lucky in that we're kind of in a Victorian basement space. It's got stunning brick vaulted ceilings. It's just the perfect setting. And then contrasting to that, you've got these vertical white towers with pink lights filled with lush green plants. So I think people have really been blown away by just that as a concept, that we're growing Tuscan mammoth leaf basil in a basement in January. The leaves are kind of, are that big. So when people see the technology and the concept, I think they're blown away. We've had an awful lot of people wanting to come and take tours of the farm and see the farm. And then the products that are going out the door, the cardboard boxes with the living greens inside, I think it's quite new. Well, it is new for people, that they kind of get this zero plastic, compostable, kind of well thought out product with living greens. I think it's we've been really, really amazed and pleased with the response that we've had so far, and just lots of really positive feedback.
And what's next? What are you hoping to achieve in I guess the months and years to come with Farm Urban and also Greens for Good?
Well, I think this farm, the Corona was really difficult for us because we were essentially supplying offices with the boxes of greens and schools. So for every box that an office bought, they signed up to an annual subscription that would subsidise us putting greens into local school kitchens. And then obviously that kind of stopped very suddenly. So we just kind of pivoted and thought, well, let's look at the home market. People are at home. People have got more time. They're cooking more. So we just kind of, it was challenging, but we turned everything and focused on the home market. And now we're getting these greens out, delivered to people's doors. We've been blown away by the response. The farm is kind of at 90% capacity. We've sold out the farm in 5 weeks, which I never thought we'd do. So in terms of next steps, we're using half our space that we've got in the basement. I'd like to double the size of the farm, and then we can increase the output. We're talking to a lot of restaurants in Liverpool who are really keen to use our produce. And then, further ahead, I think, as I was saying at the start of our conversation, I want to get this stuff embedded into the fabric of the city. I want to be farming the rooftops and the sides of buildings. There's thousands of square kilometres of space in Liverpool and cities, all over the UK. We've got the technology, we know how. We can be farming the rooftops, we can green cities, we can clean the air, we can reduce carbon, and we can, upskill a younger workforce of farmers, high tech, interesting, innovative workforce of kind of local farmers. And then running in parallel to that, I think the education programs, I've seen the impact that putting a little aquaponic system or hydroponic system in a classroom has. So I'd like to see one in every single classroom, in the city and then in the UK. And then underpinning all of that is our research and development. So, we've kind of largely a team of scientists. We've got a couple of PhD students, master's students, taking on 2 more PhD students. So this is a really new and rapidly evolving space. So to kind of keep at the cutting edge, we need to constantly be innovating and investing in R&D.
And just talk about Good Liverpool. How did you come to be involved with Good Liverpool, and why did you want to get involved?
Yeah, so I think it was a conversation actually. So Alex, I think he emailed me or rang me out of the blue and just said, we've got this idea for an e-commerce platform that's kind of give all our favourite local independents the opportunity to rapidly move online. And I think he'd seen what we'd experienced, you know, business just stopped, and we've got these products and we know we've got our customers, but we can't reach them. And so I just thought it was a brilliant idea, you know, especially in the Baltic Triangle where we're located. It's a really dense kind of ecosystem of small local independents. And to see that disappear would be, you know, a tragedy really. So I think it's a brilliant concept that gives all those people a kind of centralized platform to do business. And I think, you know, the guys that are on there, all the other vendors, they all share an interest in, it's more than just selling the product. They're all doing something because they love what they do. You know, you can see that in the products, and they want to do some good. And I think Liverpool and people generally are seeing, actually, you know, business has got the opportunity to do some good. And I think consumerism and consumer attitudes, especially in recent, you know, weeks and months, are kind of changing, and people are questioning things. So to bring all those things together, local business, people are passionate about their products and do some real good in the process. It's a no-brainer for us. You know, it's perfectly in line with our values and what we are about as a business. So it just made perfect sense.
Yeah, and you're right. This initiative does have the community at the heart of it, not only in the ways that you talked of in terms of the local traders and things like that, but also the consumers. You're supporting. You're supporting your own community, but you're also supporting the wider community, which, you know, coming from Liverpool myself, the sense of community within the city is massive. So that must be very satisfying for you, that you are doing something that really does have the community at the very heart of it.
Yeah, 100%. I think, you know, kind of in our journey over the last few years, when we were trying to raise the investment for the larger scale farm, we were in conversations with a number of supermarkets, and we were kind of thinking, you know, we need to, you know, go big with this and have these be supplying supermarkets. But actually, you know, what we found is more viable and actually more profitable, and just a nicer way of doing business is dealing with local restaurants, local people, local schools, local businesses. And it does have this real quality to it. So through Greens for Good, a pound of every sale that we make goes towards the providing boxes to vulnerable and isolated people. So as I mentioned before, previously we were supplying boxes to local schools, but now we're supplying a number of organisations across the city who are supporting people who are really isolated and vulnerable. And then we also launched the like-for-like scheme, so people can sign up to buy a box for themselves, and they can actually pay for another full box to be delivered to one of those organisations or families. And again, we're just being overwhelmed by the number of people who've signed up for that, because I think people are really keen to, okay, I'm at home and I've got my job and I'm okay, but actually there's a lot of people who are really suffering through this. How can I do something? And that idea of kind of matching what they're getting and knowing that is going to someone else in a difficult position, I think is, you know, people are really bought into that.
I mean, a question I have found myself asking a lot to people that are involved with sustainable issues, or people that are in business, or anyone when we're talking about a subject like this is, does there have to be, you know, how does sustainability but also the bottom line, for want of a better word, kind of running a successful business, how can they like join together? Because they don't have to be mutually exclusive, do they? And it's becoming more and more important in the coming years.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I don't know if it's just because, you know, we've matured a little bit as a business. You know, I still consider us a startup. We're kind of 6 years old, and we're, you know, still feels very much like a startup. But just over that short time, and you know, we're a social enterprise. We're a not-for-profit. And at the start, people couldn't understand what, you know, why have you done that? Why did you do that? But I would say that is kind of maybe one of our biggest assets at the moment, because people buy into, you know, people are really seeing the value in that and saying, well, actually, a lot of that kind of corporate consumerism, you know, and you know, focus on profit has possibly got us into a lot of this trouble. So actually, it's possible to do business that has some real social good and actually do good business, and you know, and you know, make good money, but then see that money be reinvested into the organization or into the community or into the people that you're servicing and that you're supplying. So for me, it's keeping the value inside and not exploiting it, and not sending it out to these shareholders who want the 10x return. Actually, let's grow a really healthy, sustainable business, and it can go as big as you want, but as long as you keep putting that value back in to improve your product, to improve your service, to going to grow in a way that does good, then I think that's a good thing.
I promised Alex I wouldn't turn it into Panorama, but I can never help myself, because it's an interesting topic to me. I guess final question, and you've kind of touched on it. What is the most satisfying thing about your job, about what you do? If you had to break it down, to one thing.
Oh, one thing.
It doesn't have to be. If you want to do it, if you want to say that it's everything.
I think if I just maybe pick a couple of moments, probably over the last, I'd say year. So I think when I go out and give those assemblies to school kids, you get like 300-400 kids in a room, and in that 20 minutes, you kind of, it drains me of all my energy. It's really exhausting process, actually. But at the end, when you kind of see, there's a couple of little points in the talk where, probably given like a couple of 100 times now, and you kind of see all the faces. You know they're getting it. You know that they're really picking up on what you're trying to get across. And then you think, well, the impact of that. If I'm talking to a few thousand kids a year, and something's clicked in their brain, and then the ripple effect of that gives me massive kind of hope, and it's super satisfying to walk away from that school assembly thinking, well, even if I've just reached like 10% of those kids, then the knock-on effect of that. And I think the other really satisfying thing for me is people receiving that product. So that Greens for Good box, which has got the 4 living greens and some like red Shiraz basil and mammoth leaf Tuscan basil, and then opening that box and seeing the face. So I like to do quite a few of the deliveries myself, to just have that interaction with people who are getting the product. And that for me, seeing, because it's been like 5 or 6 years of really hard work getting to that product and seeing it land with people, and people get it and they're blown away by it, that is super satisfying. And knowing that is, the freshest, high quality produce, 0 pesticides, virtually 0 waste, most of it's delivered by bicycle. I'm just really proud of that, really.
So you should be. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Paul, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thanks a lot, Lee. Cheers. Enjoyed it.